I have been a fan of this man for a long time. His brand new solo album, the 12th of his career, has just come out recently called Look Into It. Bill Lloyd, good morning and welcome to WDHA and All Mixed Up.
Jim, it's so good to see you again. We've known each other for so long, and it's really wonderful to be here today.
That just means we're getting old. Speaking of getting old, I want to start with a question. I just had Bob Cowsill on last Sunday, and I asked him a similar question. We are coming up on the 60th anniversary this February, and I don't have to tell you what that anniversary is. I know you know what it is, and I know where you were on that night of February 9th, 1964. What do you remember about that night?
I remember my mother coming up to my bedroom where I was doing whatever I was doing at the age of 8. And I can't remember, but hanging out in my bedroom, and she says, "Oh, come on down. You need to see this." And so it was really, if it weren't for my mom, my cool mom, uh, getting me to come watch the show. And then she bought me the single, "I Want to Hold Your Hand," saw her standing there, and brought it home to me. So yeah, that was and I was already into music. I'd already bought or she had bought me a Ricky Nelson album because I loved seeing Ricky at the end of Ozzie and Harriet.
Sure.
And little did I know that that was James Burton on guitar back there, Joe Osborne on bass, all that. But I already had a rock record, but the impact of the Beatles, young people are just so tired of the people of our generation talking about it because, but they just don't know. They can't really gather that, because there wasn't a million outlets for music back then, how pervasive it was, what an impact it made. And, it's like, whose quote was it about? Was it Steve Van Zandt said, they showed one day, the show was on, and then the next day, a million bands were formed.
Seemingly out
Everybody
of
wanted to
nowhere.
do, that's a good job. I want to do that.
Lenny Kaye said to me once, I wanted to know what was going on underneath the hood. That was his
Yeah,
reaction to it. And
yeah,
everything changed. And, I think back, we had just had the assassination of President Kennedy about 11 weeks earlier. And it was
yeah,
almost as if they gave us permission, the Beatles did, to
yeah,
just be ourselves again,
yeah, yeah,
whether they
yeah,
realized it or not.
yeah. There was no, anything. You couldn't plan something like that. It just happened, and it was a beautiful thing. And yeah, and the fact was though that it wasn't just the event of them showing up with all those great songs and a new look and all that. It was also the fact that they grew and carried everybody with them because it was only 6 or 7 years before you go from "I Want to Hold Your Hand" to Abbey Road, and
Mhm.
and and the musical growth there. And they were no matter what everybody else was doing, they would absorb it and then put it back out into their thing. And they were leading the pack. They didn't come up with every little innovation, but they absorbed it and worked it, into their own thing. And they were just they were a miracle, I think.
What was your reaction to Now and Then when you heard that?
Oh, I knew the song from demos and stuff, and sort of fan-based YouTube videos where people would take, I don't know if anyone had leaked what the Beatles had done before, but they used that B section, the videos I saw early on, a few years ago, they had used that B section that got taken out. So it made me think, well, maybe there was maybe that was leaked. But the fact that they really reconstructed the song and they got Lennon's voice so clear. That was the main thing that just was the emotional tug of hearing his voice so clearly at the top of the song, which was never the case in any of the other things I'd heard.
Yeah, that
And
was that was what did it for me as well. Hearing John's
yeah,
voice in the clear like that
yeah,
was
and
just
and
amazing.
and of course, I don't think it's the best of John's songs, but on the other hand, it allowed Paul and Ringo and the families of John and George to tie a bow around everything and send off the Beatles in a meaningful way, you know?
Bill Lloyd is my guest this morning here on All Mixed Up. The brand new album, Look Into It, his 12th solo album is out, and it's everything that you would expect on an album from Bill Lloyd. It's got hooks, it's got Rickenbackers, it has catchy lyrics. There were two songs, though, that stand out, and I don't want to call them novelty songs because I think that kind of puts a spin on it that I don't want to say, but they are a little quirky. And one is the number song, the number system, excuse me.
Yeah.
And when I'm looking at the lyrics going, all right, one, is that A? Two, is that B? And no, because there's only 7 numbers, I think, that you used. And I thought, I wonder if it's the notes of the song. Where did you come up with this idea?
Well, here in Nashville, the number system is something that is sort of shorthand for studio musicians, you know. You don't have to write it. You put the key in a big circle, the key in a big letter at the top of the chart, and then you just put numbers down for the tonic scale of what the chord changes are. You know, one would, if you're in the key of E would be 1,
Mm-hmm.
and A would be 4, B would be 5. A flat 7 would be D, you know, and of course, and I just thought, what if you use that as the lyric and do a kind of a Ventures on steroids, you know, instrumental, and then yell out the or speak or yell out or whatever. I think it gets more intense as it goes, and I'm screaming them by the end of the song, but yeah, you're just yelling out the chord changes. It's silly, I know. It's fun though.
Was it initially intended to be a song with lyrics, or did you want to do it as an
No, no,
instrumental?
no. The idea was to make light of the number system that all the players use.
And then the other song is the one that closes out the album, Game Show Stars of the 70s. And it is a cavalcade of everyone we watched in one form or another on some game show. And the way you close out the song lyrically, I think, is hilarious.
Well, you know what? I blame COVID, because during COVID, there was a ton of watching game shows from, you stream stuff online and you kind of go, oh, I haven't watched the match game in 4 hours. I'll go back and watch that again. But you know what happened is I wrote this little instrumental on guitar. And I said, gosh, that sounds so cheesy. So, I mean, it kind of reminds me of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it reminds me of some of those beautiful little jazzy things that NRBQ would do, you know? And I kind of went, I can't do this straight because I was really hearing like all the stuff that eventually Jim Hope played on it. And so I went over to his house and I played the acoustic guitar and did the recitation. We ran that through a filter to make it sound like it was coming through a TV over in the corner. And then he's the one who added everything else, the marimba and the flute and the even the bass and drums and everything. Jim just kind of built the track around it. I let him go. I did my bit, and and he kind of but I did write the melody and I did have the idea for it. So and it's just a little I didn't want to do it straight because I thought people might think, God, that's cheesy. But now it's got a joke attached. So,
A Mark Goodson, Bill Todman production. You play a lot of the instruments on many of the tracks here, but there are a couple of names that stand out. And one our listeners here at DHL will know is Gary Towne, of course, the bass player for Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band.
Yeah, Gary's a longtime Nashville resident and a good friend, I think. I mean, I'd like to think of him as a good friend. We've been playing music together for a long time. He played on Foster and Lloyd records back in 1990, and he played on the one we did, the reunion record we did in 2011, and then he's been on my solo records, and of course he was the founding bass player in our band, the Long Players. He was until Bruce got busy again. He was our bass player. And he still plays with us. It's just not all the time,
I wanted to ask you about the Long Players because this sounds like such a wonderful project, and I'm dying to get down to one of these shows.
Well,
I guess the next
you're
one is
welcome anytime.
The next one that comes up is towards the end of the month. You're doing one of the Beatles albums. Is it Revolve? No, it's Rubber Soul.
Rubber Soul is correct. Yeah.
So what goes involved? What's involved in putting one of those shows together?
Well, first we have to decide, and then that's a little democratic process of, of us hemming and hawing and arm wrestling over what to do next. But once we decide that, then the guys give me a little time to go out and start to enlist people to be guest singers. And I try to really cast it as best as I can about who's available. And I start making phone calls and just seeing who might be available to do these things. And sometimes musically, I really do have some ideas that, I can have a list of 20 people that I call that just aren't available. So I mean, it takes a while to cast these nights. And plus, if the word gets out early, then I'm inundated with calls of people who want to do it. And I have to kind of go, okay, well, hang on. But it's fun. It's fun. It'll be 20 years in March that we've
Wow.
been doing this band. And we started at a small little club here in Nashville called 12th and Porter, and we did Let It Bleed. And since then, we've played festivals, and we had a standing gig in Colorado for about 9 years, where we always flew out there once a year at Labor Day and played. But we play big theaters here, but we usually play a place that holds about 500, and have just sort of a steady audience of people who like to come see us recreate these albums, where we do a classic album and play it front to back, and then we take a little break, and then we come back and more songs from the artist du jour, the person, whatever the act is that we're featuring that night. Now, sometimes I'll just say, sometimes we don't do an album. Sometimes we'll do a theme. Like recently, we did Laurel Canyon, the songs and sounds of Laurel Canyon, and we've done British Invasion nights. We've done New Wave nights. We've done Stax, Motown, things like that. So sometimes it's not an album. Sometimes we want to just play songs that weren't part of classic albums. There was a lot of great music from our era that wasn't necessarily on an album that was a classic album. So,
Your career has always straddled that line between rock and country, and you can hear it on your solo albums. You could hear it with Foster and Lloyd, and you've had another recent project with Cimarron 615, and that was a wonderful record, Bill.
oh, I'm glad you like it, and I'm glad you heard it because I was never sure if anyone was listening or not. So yeah, thank you. I was, oh, I like the record we made. It took a while to get out, and I'm sorry to say, we lost one of our band members back in the early summer, and then I guess or late spring. Uh, Not long after the album was released, we lost a member, and then I finally, after doing some road work, I decided I didn't want to do road work anymore, and I'm just at that stage in life where I don't want to jump in a car or a van and do that, and so I left the band in August. So I'm sorry, I sorry to have to do that. I do wish them well, though. They're and the record we made, I'm really proud of.
You should be. It's a very good record, as is this new solo album. Look into it. We mentioned that you play a lot of the instrumentation on it and wrote most of the songs, but you do have a handful of co-writers with you, Elliot Easton of the Cars, and then Pete and Maura Kennedy. They were just guests a few weeks ago here on
Oh,
All Mixed
fantastic!
Up.
I love them. They're great. And
Pete's an amazing guitar player.
yes, he is. And they put that song on one of their records in the mid '90s. They had an album called Evolver,
Hmm.
and it opened up that album years ago. And I always wanted to do a version myself, and finally did. And that song, "Keep the Place Clean," is a silly song, funny song, because it's about a stalker who's not really looking for conquest so much as someone to clean the house. It's like, remember the Neil Young song, "Man Needs a Maid"?
Yes.
This is like a sort of a lazy psycho version of that. So
You mentioned not wanting to get back on the road, but do you have any plans to tour behind the album?
No, no. I'm just at this stage to where my favorite thing to do is to write the songs and record the songs and piece an album together. And then I take the master tapes and bury them in my backyard. I just I just don't know. I just don't like, I mean, if the opportunity comes to where I get to, if I get to an opportunity. I remember playing the Bottom Line years ago. I think you were there.
Hmm.
I had a band with Dennis Dyken and John Graboff, and that was really fun. And we rehearsed in the afternoon and played in the evening, But and I was when I was on Spider Pop Records, there was like a label funded, thing to where I played the bitter end, and you were there, I think, that night too.
Yes. In fact,
Yeah.
I just saw Dennis a few weeks ago. The band that I'm in, we opened up for the Smithereens down at the Stone Pony, and it was the
Oh, how
first
much fun
time
was that?
I had. Oh, Bill, it was amazing. I hadn't played the Pony in years,
Uh,
and my three kids have never seen me, and they know I play the guitar. They know I was in bands. They've never
uh,
seen this. And Lauren's there, my wife, and I'm playing, and they're looking at me like, "Dad." And Lauren's dancing around, and she's singing all the words, and they're looking at her, going, Mom? Like, well, this is how we met, kids. This is where it all
Yeah,
started.
that's great. I love it. I
For,
love it.
D- for DHA listeners who want to get the new album, look into it. What do they do? How do they do it?
Well, it's streaming on all those streaming platforms like Apple Music and Spotify and all those places. Uh, and you can just look up Bill Lloyd with four L's in a row, Billloyd, and and look into it is the name of the album. Now, if you go to billlloydmusic.net with all four L's in a row, that's fairly passive aggressive of me, I know, but BILLLLOYD music.net. There's a whole website there full of information on my musical doings. And, I think there's like 10 records available on CD that you could order if you want. If you like that physical product thing, holding it in your hand, not having it just come through the air.
I'm a big fan of having it physically in my hand.
Uh,
BillLloydMusic.net. Again, four L's in a row.
Four
And
L's in a row.
look into it, the name of the new album. Bill, best of luck with it. And thank you so much for your time this morning here on DHA. It's great catching up with you.
Jim, it's a pleasure.